Hi guys, welcome to Learning Electronics Repair, and it's Retro PC Sunday again, yeah? So this is where I find the old computers at the car boot sale, the flea market, and we have a look to see what we might have here. Maybe do a few repairs, maybe just look at some interesting old hardware, but hey, it's going to be fun, yeah? So here is the first PC this week. I'll just expand that a little bit, there you go. Actually rather nice looking cabinet, this one, in effectively a creamy white colour. Okay, so it looks retro, and hopefully inside this will be retro. So let's take the side off, or in fact no, let's have a look at the back first. Let's see what connections we have on this, and then maybe get some idea of what this is. Well, in fact, you can see 4 USB ports on there, onboard LAN. It's not a particularly old machine. If anything, this is going to be probably a Pentium 4 or AMD equivalent of that. Let's see. Recently, I've been thinking a lot of these machines are Pentium 4, and I've been wrong, because I've had quite a lot of AMD machines of late, Athlon machines. Let's see what this one is, shall we? I had a quick peek. I think this time actually I am right. I think this one is a P4. Okay. It has an Intel hologram on the cooling fan. This looks like a P4, that sort of heatsink, so I'm fairly confident that's what this is. In fact, I'm certain that's what this is. Does this motherboard have a model number? Well, if it does, it's not in an obvious place, that's for sure, so I don't see anything obvious here. I'm just looking down by the graphics card, under there, no. So this looks a bit generic, yeah, like there's no brand name on it, which is a bit unusual for a machine of this era. Normally by P4 era, these boards would be branded. We have a nice purple looking graphics card there, okay. I think because this one's a complete machine, I might just power this up actually. I'll check for the usual short circuits, bad capacitors. It has a hard drive in it, so I think it might be worthwhile powering this up, and let's see if we can figure out what we have. Well, we have no shorts on the 12 volts, so yellow wire here to ground. It's not shorted, so that's okay. Capacitors, well, there's a whole row of them down there. Are they any good? Let's have a look. No, they are not any good. So, change of plan then. This one we need to take it apart and see what we have. So, as I noted in the cabinet, I couldn't actually see any model number or brand on this. Yeah. It does have SATA and IDE, which is quite typical of a socket 478 machine. So, who made this thing? Let's look on the other side. Well, no, it doesn't tell us either. It just says made in China. So, one Chinese motherboard. If we can get it to power up, maybe we can figure out what it is. So the first thing will be to replace these capacitors. They're all bad. To do this, I'm going to take the heatsink off, and then we can also see what processor we have on here. Most Pentium 4 478 processors are not of any value unless you happen to have a 3.4 gigahertz, and then they're over £100, and I've sold them. Well, one. I've only ever found one. Okay. So let's see what we have here. These can be a bit tricky to take off because quite often the processor sticks to the heatsink and comes off with it. So you have to take some care that you don't bend the processor pins. We'll just free this up at both sides. Okay. Then try and lift it off straight. Well, in this case, actually the processor stayed in the board. That's a bit unusual. Usually they come off with it, glued to it by the heatsink compounds. But this feels a bit sticky, like somebody has replaced this recently, and we're probably not too worried about the state of these capacitors, that they could clearly see while they were doing so. There we are. Let's have a look. Well, it's a 3, but a 3 gigahertz, 3.2, not really any value. It's only the 3.4s that make good money, in my experience. Let's look at these capacitors. What value are they? Well, they're 2200, 6.3. And there are 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 8 of them. One actually looks to be okay, interestingly enough. The other ones don't. What I think I would like to try with this board, just out of interest, is to fit a couple of, say, 3.3s on here, just with long legs. Just tag them onto this rail. Leave these on here and see if that then allows us to boot this board up. I mean, this may boot up anyway, actually. And as I don't think it's a particularly valuable board, let's have a bit of fun. So let's see if this will actually boot up with the capacitors in this condition. If it does, fine. If it does but it's not stable, let's add a couple of capacitors on here, a couple of 3.3, see if that makes any difference. Obviously, to repair, we need to replace these, but that isn't really an issue. I've done it many times on videos, so you probably don't need to see that again today. Let's have a play around. I have this ready. Let's put the power on. I have my current limiter on. You probably didn't see the light flash in the background there. Okay. Put the current limiter off and put the power on. And then we'll try to start this. And it doesn't boot, okay? Nothing actually happens. We have all zeros. Let's take the graphics card out. Take the RAM out. And let's see if it will actually try to boot. So power on again. Start. No, it doesn't try to start. So that's with all these bad capacitors in. I was a bit surprised. I thought it may actually try to boot up. So let's try adding a few extra capacitors. Leave all these in. Put a few more capacitors on here. And see if it boots then. If not, let's recap it and see if it boots then. I mean, it may be something else causing the problem anyway, but it's an interesting experiment, I think. To try this, I'm going to take some 3300 low ESR capacitors. Okay, I have 3 of them. I'm actually going to add these to the existing capacitors that are on the board. This looks like it might be easy because it looks like here we have some more capacitors that are not fitted but are in parallel with these. We can test that. And we'd have one at the other end as well. So I could fit my capacitors onto these. We just need to check whether those are actually in parallel with the existing capacitors. So let's do that. Here we can see the capacitors, the ones that are fitted, the ones that aren't. So this end is probably ground, and it does go to these. So that's fine. And if we look right down the other end, the last one, well, that is ground, but I've got a feeling these might be actually a different rail. Looking at the positive side, let's have a look. So this is the positive side of this one. Goes to here. Oh, it does go to there, and it does go to there. So okay, so we can put one here, and then the other two. Let's just check, but I'm pretty sure these will. Yeah, one goes there. And one goes there. So let's tag these capacitors on and then see what it does. To make this easier, I'm just going to trim the 2 legs so they're the same length, okay? This will not prevent me from using these capacitors somewhere else in future if I want to do that. And the last one, same. Close enough. And now we're just going to solder these onto the board. So to do this, a bit of flux, ground. Actually no, this is positive. You can see where the ground is on these capacitors. This is ground. Okay. Ground. We'll take a bit of solder. Probably easier with the soldering iron flat actually. Get down here. and onto the vehicle, which is this one. Same with this one. Okay. Add a little bit of solder to our capacitors. Like so. Now let's just see if we can solder these on temporarily. Well, actually, I'm going to do the one to the inside first. It's going to be easier to do. Then we can get to the other one. I think that's good enough. Can you see it there? Got the focus, yeah, you can see it. Okay. Other one. Okay, there's the second one. And one at the other end. There are our capacitors. I'm just going to check that they are all connected. So if I actually go onto the ground leg of this one, it should connect to the ground legs of the other ones. Onto ground, yes. And then the same from the positive leg to the other ones. That's good enough, I'm happy with that. But if we wanted to check like we were checking to ground, we can also check from the MOSFETs, the junction between the two. Yeah, also goes there. This will also go. Okay. So that's effectively the junction of the MOSFETs that goes to the coil to the positive of the capacitors. So we know they're together. And I just want to make sure I haven't put any short circuits on this by soldering these capacitors. So let's see. Well, I haven't put a short. You may have thought at first I have, but it's reading 2.8 ohms. And if we remove the processor, that should go away because that is the resistance of the processor. Okay, now it's reading 50, 60 ohms climbing up, okay? So there's no short. Don't let that fool you guys. These processors read quite low. The bleep might have fooled you, but the reading doesn't. That's shorted. That's the resistance of the processor core, okay? So let's try this again and see if it'll start now. We're ready to go again. Power on. Start. And it made no difference, okay? It still will not start. Now I think, personally, it's likely the problem is somewhere else, not those capacitors. But the only way to prove that would be to replace all the capacitors. So let's do it. Guys, it turns out I'm out of 2200 microfarad 6.3 capacitors. I could try something else, but what I've just done with this, as you saw, I put 3 times 3300. So if these are doing nothing effectively, then that would give me 9900 microfarads in total spread across the rail. And it didn't start. Now, there are 8 of them. So if you work that out at 2200, you've got 16,000 plus 1,600. So 17,600 microfarads. Now, I would have thought that if I put effectively 10,000 on there, rather than 16, 17,000 on there, it would probably start. So I do still suspect the problem is something else on this. But seeing as I need to order capacitors anyway for other jobs, I'm going to order a bag of 100 of the 2200s, maybe a couple hundred while I'm at it, and we'll come back on this one. So it's not going anywhere. We'll come back and have a look once I've got the parts. Yes, I can start doing other stuff, but I think in the interest of this video, it'll prove more if I actually replace these with the right ones first, and then let's see if it still doesn't start, and then we can sort of move on from there, okay? And we have some more things to look at, so I hope you can agree with me on that one. It'll probably only take a couple of weeks at the moment for things to arrive. They do seem to be very fast from AliExpress of late, so it won't be too long before you see this again. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, so this is this machine. I don't know if you can see the sticker. Will it focus? It says Pentium 4 inside, and it probably isn't going to do. Intel Pentium 4, black and silver case. Yeah. Doesn't look like such an old machine, to be honest. And this has AGP, so it is vintage or retro. But it's also a socket 775 machine. You can tell by the heatsink. So compared with that last machine was a Pentium 4 478. This is a Pentium 4 775. Now, when these processors were main market, we'd all really moved at that point onto PCIe. So AGP was on the way out. It was pretty much finished, really. But obviously, some of the motherboard manufacturers saw a need at the time for people who had expensive, powerful, for the era, AGP graphics cards who wanted to upgrade but not change the GPU. So some limited number of boards like this were made and sold, but not so many, okay? That wasn't the mass market. So therefore, there are less of these around. And in any collector's market, there's two factors. A, supply, how many are there? B, demand, how many people want them? And because these are faster than the 478 Pentium 4s, retro collectors do want these machines, or the boards. Hence, this is more valuable than the previous one, okay? They were both Pentium 4s, but this one is the more valuable sought after board, without me looking up the prices. If I'm wrong, comments below, guys. Seeing as we're waiting for some capacity on the other one, let's have a look at this one. And here it is, a Foxconn motherboard. I have a retro rig at home built on a Foxconn motherboard that actually has AGP. It is socket 775, but it also supports Core 2 Duo as well as the Pentium 4, and that is a very sought after board because Core 2 Duo, or indeed Core 2 Quad in particular, with AGP is a very, very unusual and rare combination. Whether this Foxconn board is like the one I have, I'm not totally sure, but it looks similar. So let's first of all see if this is working, and then let's see how desirable this motherboard is. We're ready to go, so power on and start. And it starts, and it bleeps, and it works, okay? I'll attach the capture cards. I have to put a VGA card in. I'm on the onboard video at the moment. So let's put the capture on and then let's see what we have. Once again then, power on, start, bleep, picture. So there we have it. I'll just shut it down and restart it again so we can see what it says. Okay. Here we go. Pentium 4 3.06 gigahertz. Let's try 2 DIMMs. I fitted 2 DIMMs now, so these are a pair of 1 gig, so we should have 2 in total. Power on, let's see if it works. Well, it's booting, okay. Yeah, sees 2 gig of RAM, I can see that there. Okay, so no hard disk. I mean, there was no hard disk or OS with this machine, but this motherboard does very much look like it is working. Let's see if we can boot an operating system on this. This is a Windows 7 drive I happen to have installed. Whether it will boot and actually load is anybody's question really with this sort of thing. It's starting to load. I mean, if it doesn't load, I don't think that means a problem with the machine. It just means that I have to install a fresh operating system on the drive. I mean, this is common, to be quite honest. Yeah, it's not going to boot off. It is starting to read it. Oh, in fact, it is going to try and load from it. Let's start normal. Okay. That means that this hard drive was previously used on some machine that couldn't load, so there's every opportunity of this operating system being corrupted. It looks like it is, or it just isn't set up to run on this hardware. That's not strange, okay? I can see if this will boot from my easy to boot USB, okay? Power on, start. Yeah, it's booting from that. So there's every chance this hardware is absolutely fine. Yes, you can see it will boot from easy to boot. This is basically a Linux type operating system. Again, we've seen the 2 gig of RAM in there, 64-bit. So we have to say this one is working really. But here's the big question. Is this desirable or is it very desirable? The answer to that is really, what processors does it support? This is the motherboard that we have, the P4M800P7MB RS2H, and if we look at this one, it supports Pentium 4, Pentium D, but that's it really in Celeron. So this does not support the Core 2 Duo. Now the one I have at home, which is very similar to this, is a P4M800 Pro version 2, okay, or Pro-M version 2, which is this one, okay, and you'll see this one similar, but also supports Intel Core 2 Duo, okay, and it supports dual core as well. So this is the most desirable type of these boards, if you like, apart from the ones with both PCIe and AGP. So what we have here is a nice retro motherboard, but not quite as nice as that one, okay? Shame, I thought I might have found the second one I've ever found with that support, apart from the, again, the ones with PCIe and AGP, but I haven't. So there we have it, guys. That's our motherboard. I didn't do this earlier. You can see it there. That's our motherboard, okay? So that's what we have. A nice piece of retro kit, but could have been a bit nicer than that. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that one. I tend to keep these Sunday videos a little bit short, but some nice hardware to look at. The first one, I will definitely be ordering a whole bag of those capacitors. I need them anyway, so you'll see that back in a few weeks' time. Okay, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, guys, and I look forward to seeing you all soon on another Learning Electronics Repair video. Ciao for now, guys.